Yeah, welcome to another episode of Three Conservative Gimps. We've got a great show today. We have a special guest coming up in a moment here. We're going to be talking about DeSantis and Governor Abbott sending illegal aliens to blue cities. So we'll be talking about that, and also we'll be talking about I think somebody that Thaddeus might know, our current governor, Jared Polis. I believe they served together when they were in Congress. So let's get this show on the road. Let's bring in my co-host all the way from Muskogee, Oklahoma. It's Lloyd Mendenhall.
Hey, Art, how you
Welcome,
doing?
welcome. I'm doing pretty good.
Well, good. Glad to hear it. So, uh, I am too. I just discovered something. I thought I had when I had my eyes fixed. They made it for close up, which means I can read the smallest detail of warnings on a pack of cigarettes. You know,
Oh, good for you.
but
How's that
yeah, good
working
for
out?
me. It's not, but anyways, it I can read it though, but I can't read past my arm's length. In other words, I have to wear my distance glasses just to look at the chat now. They shorten my range on me. I mean, I haven't been able, but it's really bad. I got a fixed focus, and that's it. It's like wearing those uh readers, like Ken Heron wears. It's like wearing them all the time, which means you can't see
Or
squat out further. So, yeah, that's how my week's going.
well, glad to see you're feeling better after your dentist appointment on Monday. But let's
Yeah,
get
I'm
this
trying not
going
to smile too.
because this guy he's only going to be with us for a little bit, and
Okay.
it's always a pleasure having him on the show. Former congressman from Michigan, it is Thaddeus McCotter. Welcome, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hey, Art. Hey, Lloyd. How are
Hey,
you?
Hey, how you doing, Thaddeus?
I just want to reemphasize that I am no longer in Congress, so I cannot be blamed.
oh, that is true. That is
Yep, that's definitely something you want to let people know. Not your fault anymore.
Anymore.
well, hey, at least you're not governor like Jared Polis. So now we're number one in auto thefts and fentanyl overdose.
Oh, the
Yeah.
fentanyl. Yeah, that is such a dangerous drug, and obviously the in many ways it's being transshipped places like communist China here deliberately, run up through the border through the cartels. And a friend of
Yeah.
mine, Joe Humeyer, former Marine, he does a lot of work on the border, a lot of reporting on the border, and he runs a think tank, Center for Secure America. He talked about how the cartels bring the fentanyl in, knowing how lethal it is for people who use it. And they had talked to one of the cartel members, and they said, "Why do you do this? I mean, you're killing your customers." Ordinarily, when you use cocaine and other things, you want to addict them so that there's a constant demand for it. And they
Right.
said two things. One is we still make enough money off of it, we can kill and it doesn't matter. And the other part of it, he said, we don't mind killing the gringos. And so, in short, what the communist Chinese and others who transship this through the cartels are doing is, in many ways, essentially deliberately doing this to kill Americans.
Wow. That,
Yeah.
that
And so I was surprised that Colorado would be number one in
yep.
fentanyl overdoses, fentanyl deaths.
Well, because our infinite state assembly decided to make fentanyl not a felony, but a misdemeanor. And then this last cycle, they they lowered it down to where just a, a couple grams.
What did they say? Like fentanyl? They said that I think it's like a pound, 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds or something can kill 500,000 people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand decriminalizing potential drugs if you don't think that they're going to be that harmful to individuals, like marijuana. I can understand it. I may not agree with it, but I can understand it. But fentanyl,
Right.
we know what it is. We know how dangerous it is.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be under the care of a licensed physician or prescription process. This isn't something
Yeah.
that you can just, okay, well, we'll legalize it and hope for the best, because we know what's going to happen. It's going to be the worst. What was the rationale for that, Lloyd? What was the rationale for that?
Well, from my understanding, was to lessen the penalty and not have as many dealers in prison. You know,
You want them in prison. That's
we
the
want
type
them
of
in prison.
substance, the dealers in that substance you want in prison, because it's so lethal and so deadly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But
But Thaddeus, we're dealing with Democrats.
Still, Democrats have relatives, Democrats have children, and they should not want that. I can understand compassion for people who are addicted. I can understand if someone has a substance abuse problem, I prefer treatment, certainly over incarceration. But when you're talking about dealers and the people who make money off of this, who don't mind if their customers get killed because they know how deadly this is, the lethality of this drug is off the charts. And even people who don't, you see first responders that come into contact just around the fentanyl can wind up in the hospital and can overdose and can have problems just by trying to save people who actually have been using it, or in places where it's been around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fentanyl that they're selling on the streets is such a potent combination. I mean, because it's just raw, and fentanyl, such as Duragesics, which is a brand name prescription patch, even that has to be monitored uh, very heavily. And it's for people with it's used. It was originally used with cancer patients that had problems dealing with the morphine. And
There's
there's
sorry, I didn't mean
yeah,
to
go
interrupt.
ahead. No, that's fine.
No,
That's fine.
when people talk about heroin, we all know how dangerous heroin is, how addictive heroin is, how lethal it can be. Fentanyl's not. There's no comparison. Fentanyl is infinitely worse, infinitely more deadly. And again, it's deadly to even people who don't use it, that just happen to be around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because of the way it's made down there, made in China and made throughout the world by these people. They don't make it as like I said, a controlled manufacturing company like Duragesics, which is a brand name. And the only reason I'm familiar with is my wife has been on the fentanyl patch now for 15 years because of her Parkinson's, the cancer she had, But it was like one patch every 72 hours. She does one patch about every 7 days, and she's on the lowest dose because it controls the pain of what she's got, but it's not the kind. And I would no more go buy that stuff off the street because I just wouldn't do it. I've always been anti-drug, and so has my wife. And but this makes it harder for people to. Here in Oklahoma, you have to answer a series of questions and fill out a form. You have to go see a doctor every 3 months. I mean, for even stuff like tramadol, which is a very low. It wasn't originally classified as an opioid, but now it is. In Oklahoma, anyways. And you've got to go through a process just to get it if you're going to do it legal. And that's the way that's the way we've controlled my wife's health and mine. And we go to the doctor. We see him every 3 months. We talk to him every month on the phone to go through this checklist of no, we're not. And and of course they do blood tests, and but that's using it for its prescribed reason. It's not to get high. It's not to sell. It's not, that. But that's also one that has been manufactured under the FDA guidelines, under FDA process. That's not this crap coming across the border. This crap coming across the border is 1,000 times more deadly.
No, I
and
understand.
it makes it hard for those that use it properly to be able to get it, because they've had to put so many restrictions to it for the legal user that it makes it impossible, or it doesn't make it impossible, but it really and that's the kind of check and balance we need for something like that. We don't need it to be, give them a misdemeanor because they've been selling it on the street corner. That's not the way to deal with this drug situation. And uh, street drugs just aren't good no matter what. But the way they're mixing this stuff right now is so deadly.
And again, Lloyd, the cartels, they don't care because they make money just shipping it.
Yes.
And even if the customer dies, they're still making money, and they figure they'll just find more customers. And plus, in conjunction with the people supplying it, such as communist Chinese, they will say that they aren't doing it. In the final analysis, it is to destroy and undermine the structure of American society. They want to kill Americans and destabilize us. And in many ways, it's a payback for the opium wars.
Yeah, for everything that happened down in Colombia, 30 years ago.
Well, I was thinking with the communist Chinese, with what the British did. And in fact, ironically, we were the
opium wars.
Yeah, we were trying to stop it with the open door policy. But anyway, so what I'm curious about too is why I was surprised by the carjackings. The car thefts are number one now in the country too.
Because we have what's called PR bond now, because we've got a Soros, handpicked attorney general now running our state, and so they're very relaxed on a lot of because what they did is they classified auto theft down from a felony to a misdemeanor. And now you know who's getting hurt the most? Because they're stealing cars that are under $15,000. So it's the working stiff that really gets hurt the most. And not only that, they're stealing catalytic converters as well.
Yeah, crime is going to be an issue. Obviously, the economy is a huge issue. Education is an issue. Inflation's an issue. Energy's an issue. Crime's an issue. And in many states, abortion is an issue. But in the final analysis, you have a matrix of issues. The Democrats would like to make abortion the number one issue because they feel they have an advantage on that. Right. But they're lagging behind on education. They're lagging behind on the inflation issue. They're lagging behind on crime. They're lagging behind on energy. In fact, they've made just a total mess of the economy in general. And the Better Business Bureau, it's too bad they can't fine the Democrats for calling it the Inflation Reduction Act, which no one believes. So when you look at it, I mean, it's going to be a very pivotal election, because if you reward the Democrats' performance, the Biden administration and his lackey Democratic Congress, if you reward this type of dysfunction, you're just going to ensure that you get more dysfunction over the next 2 years. And I don't think the vast majority of Americans' family budgets want any more dysfunction, any more inflation, any more indoctrination of their children, any more crimes on the streets that go unpunished with bonding out criminals so they can just avoid their trials. I think they're kind of done with that, and they want to be able to afford to heat their houses in the winter.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you want to avoid all that, don't vote Democratic this time.
Yeah. That's true. But here's the deal. Jared Polis, you know that he's an Uber millionaire. Yeah. When he ran for governor the first time, he sunk $25 million in his campaign. He's probably going to do the same this time around. And we finally have a halfway decent candidate, Heidi Canal, who's really putting it to Polis, and Polis is avoiding the debate.
Well, he doesn't want to debate his record, I suppose. Does he? That should tell you everything you need to know. I would think that if I had a record, I'd be proud of it.
As you said, Yeah, exactly. But as you said, they're wanting to make abortion a number one issue, and I think the reason, and it's starting to poll, it's starting to track a little more in the polls, and I think the problem, and this seems to always, and I said this 3 months ago to Art. I said, if there's a way we can lose this election, lose this overall election, we'll find a way to do it. The Republicans always do, and I think what they need to be doing, these candidates need to be doing, is okay. Let's talk about abortion for a minute. Let's talk about everything else, but then let's talk about abortion. Let's talk about what the Supreme Court ruling really says, not what you're hearing from the other side. It's not illegal in Colorado. It's pretty strict here in Oklahoma where I live, but uh, that's get it over with. Be done with it. But let's we need to stay focused on what and keep reminding the voters that listen, abortion one way or the other, no matter how you feel, it's not going to fill your gas tank. It's not going to lower your electric or your gas bill or your water bill. It's not going to lower your utilities. It's not going to put more food on the table. And I think our candidates really need to start focusing on that, and ignore that. Now they're trying to play the Donald Trump card, which the Democrats, that's all they ever talk about is Donald Trump. But let's get away from that. Donald Trump will be taken care of when it needs to be done, and he'll come out, for the good. I believe, but that's not what this election is about. This is a midterm election in which our candidates really need to hammer home the message, and they need to all the Republican candidates need to be working on the same message and working on how it affects you locally. Like today, I went and bought a dozen eggs. It cost me more to buy a dozen eggs than it does a gallon of gas, and that's ridiculous. You know, Used to buy them at Easter time back in the old days. Well, 10 years ago, 97 cents a dozen. Now to $3.97 a dozen.
Well, it's really kind of a sign of desperation on the Democrats' part. But first, as someone who's pro-life, I would just say, look, they enjoy attacking you for your position. I would just say, okay, do you support partial birth abortion? Do you support third trimester abortions? Do you support Planned Parenthood selling fetal baby parts from aborted children? What do you not support regarding abortion? Is there anything that is beyond the pale to you? Are you that extreme that you would support such an extremist position on abortion? Okay, because the American people do not like abortion, but they may think that it should be legitimate and legal in certain places. Fine. But that doesn't mean they want it all the time, with up through 9 months, partial birth abortion, babies being partially born and then being killed later to make sure, or the fetal baby parts. So the left has a lot to answer for on this. If you want to have that debate, let's have that debate right now and see which side you want to come down on. But the problem is regarding Trump is Donald Trump is not my president. He is not anybody's president right now.
No.
Right now, the problems that we have on inflation, the problems we have on education, the problems we have on crime, the problems we have with energy, the problems that are immediately touching and affecting the American people are happening on Democrat Joe Biden's watch and on the Democratic lackey Congress he has in place. And the only reason we're going to fix this is to throw them out and put in Republicans who actually govern responsibly and in accordance with the wishes of the American people. So that's very simple. If you want the ultimate deflection and get off on tangential issues and get off on a guy who isn't president anymore, that's a sign of weakness, and that's a sign you shouldn't be in a position of responsibility and working for the sovereign American people.
Mm-hmm. And you just gave one of the greatest answers I've heard to this whole thing. I wish you were running because we need more.
I'm a recovering politician. You made me lapse back. That's kind of muscle memory.
No, that's great. But that's exactly what you said is what our candidates need to be pushing it that way. They need to. You just put in a minute and a half the whole focus of what this election is about, and that's exactly how it should be handled. Unfortunately, some of our Republicans get drug into the Donald Trump, the abortion, taking away women's rights. Women's will never be able to, and then we're going to take it.
Or January 6th.
Yeah, or January 6th, or gay rights are going to be removed. I mean, they just the deflection.
Yep.
It's like the man behind the curtain. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Look at the big
And,
face on the
and,
wall here. You know.
It's
and
incredibly,
calling us ultra MAGA
yeah,
and
whatever.
semi-fascist. I
I
mean,
know. It's like,
semi-fascist. We're
yeah,
just a little bit more fascist than
am I the one? Am
semi.
I the one telling parents you
I
can't
mean,
know about what your kids are doing in school? Is
Mm-hmm.
that me? No, that's not me. I think that's extremist behavior, but it's not coming from Republicans. Okay,
No.
I'm not letting criminals out of jail with bail reform, so they can go to
mhm.
criminal, so they can victimize more people. Those would be extremist Democrats doing that to the American people. I think that when you look at it, it's not Republicans who have extreme economic positions lying about the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a joke. It's not what it is. It's not what it does. Making it harder for you to stay in your family budget, or for you to rise up and get prosperity like everybody should have to have that opportunity.
Right.
So in the final analysis, look, they can call us anything they want. It's a sign of weakness on their part. You're not fooling anybody because as Lloyd said, all you got to do is go to the supermarket and see the damage that these policies are doing. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you have to pay for the damage that these policies are doing every time you check out at the supermarket counter.
Right.
Yeah. And this is
And,
the message. This is the way this message needs to be presented by everybody that is a conservative or has conservative values.
Well, they try, and it depends. I mean, at this point in time, the worst thing we can have is Republicans trying to purge each other for whatever reason. I've always called this a triage election. It's much like what the Democrats considered the 2018 election. They saw Republicans controlling the Senate, the House, and the White House, and they wanted to stop the Trump agenda. Now, of course, we have not engaged in sedition the way that the DOJ and Mr. Rosenstein and others, Mr. Wray, and the Democrats did by lying about President Bush. And the more we find out every day that Danchenko being categorized as a confidential human source, to hide them from people like Devin Nunes, who were trying to uncover the lie of Russiagate and the sedition that was involved to undermine a duly elected sitting president. So we don't do that. But what we have to do is prevent them from making things worse for the American people, not for Republicans, but for the American people. And I think that our candidates will be able to do that because, as Lloyd said, again, you guys know, the American people are very practical. They're very smart. And if they see something they don't like every 2 years, they'll throw it out.
Yeah.
Yep. And now these same liberals, they get all butthurt when a couple Republican governors from red states decide to ship some illegal aliens to their city.
Well, it's like Martha's Vineyard. We see a lot of, right now, we see a lot of diversity, but we're not seeing a lot of inclusion and equity, are we?
There you go.
So no, we're not. But look, but on a serious side, I can understand the political value of showing the rank hypocrisy of the left on this. But we don't know who a lot of these people are.
That's true.
So, I mean, so let's not get caught up in, I mean, you're taking a victory lap, but you have to understand, we need to know who's coming in the country. And if we don't know who they are and you send them to Martha's Vineyard, or just like President Biden, sending them around the country, that's a problem. Because as some of the people who studied this will tell you, you're seeing a lot of people who aren't necessarily Central Americans, people who aren't necessarily South Americans or Mexicans coming up through the border. You're seeing a lot of people from around the world that are coming here. And even people, we found Hezbollah down there. You can see on the Venezuelan-Colombian border, you can see Russian drones. You can see IRGC personnel. You can see some of the Chinese influence down there. So when you start to see them, one of the concerns is that they may be importing into the United States through the porous border to put in place people who mean us no good. And we won't know who they are. And the last thing you want are Republican governors abetting their placement throughout the country. You need to know who they're placing. Now, I don't know whether DeSantis knows who they're placing. I don't know whether Governor Abbott does, but they damn sure better before they send them somewhere else.
Right.
Just like the president should.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
well, maybe they go up to them and say, habla español, and when they see, all right, we know they're from
Well, we know this is not an organic movement of people looking for prosperity. We know that a lot of these people are being exploited and manipulated by people who mean the United States no good.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this is being tracked. This is not unknown to our policymakers. The sin of it is that they're allowing this to continue. Because if you think of the courage it takes to try to come to the United States to seek a better future, it is just evil to try to exploit them for political purposes or for their own security purposes to destabilize the border of the United States or to enter the United States
Right.
and being human trafficked, being smuggled. I feel sorry for the migrants, and unfortunately, this administration, no matter how much lip service they give it, doesn't seem to give a damn about what happens to the migrants, do they? They view them as just a political wedge to try to get them in because they view them as future voters. Well, as we're finding out in places, the Hispanic community is not necessarily pro-Democrat right about now. They're starting to reconsider much of what they've assumed in the past, and you're seeing, I think, a great swing now, a great transformation of the Hispanic vote towards the Republican side.
Yeah, and because the Hispanics are predominantly, they're family oriented. I mean, I have some wonderful neighbors over here. They're Mexican. They came here and became citizens, brought their kids here. One of their sons, he decided just before his 10 years was up to go back across the border to get a girlfriend, and he spent 10 years down there. And but he fought and they worked and they did everything they could to get him back up here with the rest of his family. But they're very family oriented. They have very conservative values. They have, they're what we are. They family, and they're hard working. They're some of the hardest working people, I've seen around here. And I mean, they're doing well enough that they can hire white guys to do their yard. I mean, literally, but they work hard at it. They it's like, and that's the kind of people that really are, if they're not careful, they're not careful. I mean, that's the kind of people we want here. The people that are willing to, look at this as a country in which they can, have their dreams.
Well, Mayra Flores is the first Mexican-born member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and she's a Republican. She's a Republican from a border area in Texas, and defeated a Democrat to do it. In what was once a Democratic district. So, look, my wife, my children, they're Hispanics. So, my son's fiance is waiting. We're trying to get a fiance visa for her, so she can enter the country and they can get married. And it's been months and months and months. So you say to yourself, much like the Hispanic community is saying, it's when you have uncontrolled immigration, where you have a porous border, it's their communities that are overrun by MS-13 and crime. It's their communities that are overrun by people lowering the wages for jobs and deflating rising wages in their area. It's their hospital and social services that are being overwhelmed, their schools that are being overwhelmed predominantly. And so they're like, we play by the rules. Why doesn't anybody else have to? And this is a huge problem. So for my son, they're trying to play by the rules. They are playing by the rules, and yet they can't, for months upon months, they can't even get a request to have an interview in the embassy down right now in Colombia, and it's being processed in LA. So there's no excuse for this. For people, why should you be punished for playing by the rules when the federal government is rewarding people who are being exploited by every bad actor in the world?
Yeah.
And ensuring that we're going to continue to have more exploitation because it's being rewarded. And the exploitation is by the bad actors, not by the migrants. My sympathy is with the migrants.
Absolutely.
I feel great. I'm outraged at the way this administration treats the migrants and ensures more people are going to be exploited by their actions.
Right.
Yet they don't seem to give a damn.
Well, in this administration, just they're as guilty as those that are doing the exploiting, because they're not stopping this. If they controlled it and they stopped it, the exploitation would not be. It wouldn't be worth them, the cartel and the smugglers to do it, because it's being stopped. So they'll be out all that money moving these people up here to have them stopped and turned back. They've just lost their clientele. And this government,
they're abetting it. They're abetting it because if you smuggle them here, the Biden administration is more than happy then to send them around the country, put them up, pay for things. And so it's just guaranteeing that there's going to be continued. People are going to go, well, it worked. Maybe I'll give it a shot. And then they become more open, more susceptible to being exploited by the bad actors. And why only politics can explain this, because you would think that the people who like to put up these lawn signs that no human being is illegal might actually care about the migrants that their policies are helping to exploit. But then again, that would require introspection, which is not their forte.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just went to a funeral for a former coworker, and she came to this country in 1976 as a refugee from Laos, and so she had a sponsor here in the United States, and once she got here, got established, she was able to sponsor more family members to come into this country. And fortunately for her, she landed a job at a company that I worked for 26 years that really reached out to refugees. Just recently, a few years ago, they were helping out people from Bosnia and the Ukraine. And so they were very mindful of refugees that have come here legally seeking work.
Well, I got to end on this because I got to help my son. He's going back tomorrow to see his fiance. Let me put it this way. Lincoln said, America is the last best hope of Earth. And sometimes Americans either don't see that or it doesn't register at times or overlook it. But you know who knows America's the last best hope of Earth? The people who want to come here and become Americans.
Yeah.
And for that, we should thank them, because it keeps us humble, and it always reminds us that our goal is to form a more perfect union and provide the world with what an example of what a free people can achieve.
Yeah.
And so I thank them for that. And again, I thank you for having me, Art. Thank you, Lloyd.
It's always a pleasure having you,
I always
Thaddeus.
Enjoy talking with you, Thaddeus.
I'll try to come back sooner.
All right. You
Please
got
do,
it.
yeah.
We'll keep in touch. Thanks. Have a great evening, and take care of your son and hopefully future daughter-in-law.
Oh,
absolutely. I hope that works out.
It will.
Good.
Alrighty. So on that note, I am going to share a video that Lloyd, you have already seen, and Thaddeus has seen. I think you'll get a kick out of it. I think it's probably one of the better political ads I've seen in a long time, and it's about our current governor here in Colorado.
Yes.
So let's bring that in and. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and let's play.
Find it, try it, paint it, love it. Find it, try it, paint it.
Sorry for the ads, guys.
I was down to talk to my doctor.
All right, we know you're down.
Ask your healthcare provider about Rybelsus today.
Oh, why? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Wrong videos. Please stand by. Here we go.
Here's to you, Jared Polis.
Here's to you, Jared Polis.
In just a few short years, you turned Colorado into a hot mess. Thanks to you, we are now #1 in the country in auto theft.
Has anyone seen my car?
Drug overdoses are now as common in our state as bighorn sheep. If your goal was more violent crime and homelessness, Job well done, Jared Polis.
There's poop on the sidewalk.
You raise taxes by calling them fees, and then you say you're going to cut taxes. Well played, Governor. We almost fell for it.
That's a dirty trick.
So here's to you, Jared Polis. No one is better at creating problems and then saying, I'm just the person to fix them.
Here's to you, Jared Polis.
Paid by Restore the Rockies. Isn't that a great ad?
Oh, yeah.
God, that,
It's like one of those. It's like one of those ads, or one of those YouTube channels where you see, when they're advertising, they take and do a satire of a commercial on television. If
Right.
only they were, if only they were honest about how much an electric car really costs, and then they have an advertisement about the ridiculous cost of an electric car. That's the same thing they just did there, and that's just absolutely spot on.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember down on Latimer Street back in the days, back when I was a kid. That was where that was Skid Row.
Right.
Latimer Square down on anyways, that used to be Skid Row.
Larimer
But
Square.
I never Larimer Square. What did I say? Latimer?
Yeah,
Latimer,
you said
yeah.
Latimer.
Latimer.
Latimer, Larimer, Schmerimer.
Yeah. It's Larimer. That's right. Latimer is in
Larimer was Skid Row at one time. Yeah.
It was Skid Row, but you even then, you never saw what that just showed there. In those people, laying it. I mean, you never saw it that bad. I mean, yeah,
Right.
you saw the bums, but it wasn't it wasn't nothing like that.
Right. And now Larimer Square is a vibrant entertainment place. The Comedy Works is right on the corner of Larimer and 15th. And if you go further north, a couple blocks over, you got Coors Field that
Right.
also revitalized what was the warehouse district. Now those
Right.
old warehouses, they're lofts, they're apartments now.
Yeah.
And
I knew they'd started on that years ago. They were trying to. They were constantly. I think in the 70s they were trying to convert that and start
right.
the process. But in the 60s, but it never looked at it. Oh, I can't stand seeing myself on that damn missing tooth. Thanks to the VA, they didn't get me the temporary made like they were supposed to. Well, it was partly because I had to take Judy to the hospital, and I couldn't go to that appointment. But they were supposed to. I just had to run in there, do the thing. They were going to fix it. They were going. Yeah.
There you go.
December. That's when they said they'd fix it. So
Okay.
Halloween's coming up, though. I'm gonna get some of them fake teeth to wear.
There you go. So,
But yeah, nothing looked
We've
as
got
bad as what was in that
elections
video.
coming up in less than 60 days.
Yeah.
For us here in Colorado, we got an election month because the ballots go out in the middle of October because
Right.
we got mail-in ballots, which I think you need to go and vote. You need to go to a polling place and you need to show your flipping ID to go
Yep.
vote. And if you can't make it, if you have a disability or you're out of the country, get an absentee ballot.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
the way it used to be. This mail-in ballot
Right.
stuff is just. I mean, it's gotten out of hand, and I don't understand it. It's just
Yeah.
but
Then you have this thing called ballot harvesting where you got people going into old folks' home and they say, "Oh, let me help you fill out the ballot," and then they go and turn them in. But the law here in Colorado, it can't be more than 10 ballots per ballot box. Drop box. But they get
Yeah.
around it anyway.
Oh yeah. If a person's going to cheat, they're going to cheat. It's just I think our election process. our Constitution leaves it to the states how they want to set it up. That's the way it was set up by our Constitution. But I think at some point, I don't know that we need a constitutional amendment, but I think we need some. We need to have some uniformity. The problem is when you get to the electronic stuff or whatever, you got bad players that are sitting there setting this stuff up, and it can, it's not trustworthy. I'm like you. A good old fashioned punch or paper ballot that you go in there, you either got to check off, draw a pin through the line, or something like that. Then read it through an electronic counter.
There you go. It
which is the way we do it here.
Decades before.
Yeah.
It'll work again. Yeah.
We didn't have the first time we had problems with ballots being an issue in an election was in 2000. The hanging chads. Thank God for hanging chads. It's like, and the Democrats saw this as a way to start, infiltrating. Well, we've made a new system that's safer, stronger, better. We've got the technology, and it's turned out to be the biggest, most crooked thing there is. And he mentioned something about the new Inflation Reduction Act, which is really just it's a new way of for the tree huggers, the green people. It's just it's a Green New Deal is what it is. And we've got this climate czar, who is
John Kerry.
John Kerry.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's been using his jet around the country. I think.
You mean his electric jet?
Yeah, well, $330 million.
Solar powered?
330. No, it's fuel powered, and his carbon footprint is like 330 million cubic feet of carbon displacement, or whatever they call that crap. I don't speak tree hugger real well, so. But that's I was reading that, and he has the audacity and backbone to go to some of these countries that are third world countries, and they're just starting. They want to raise their level of living and tell them that we know you've got all that natural gas, but you really need to. It needs to be short term. You need to go to electric power. Well, that's what they're trying to do. Bring electric to everybody, but you got to have renewable energy. That's not the way to do. I mean, good Lord, they've got to start somewhere, and. When you got a guy flying around in a jet,
so we have wood to burn.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like they convinced us all years ago that there was a paper shortage and that we were deforesting trees and killing trees by having paper sacks, and so we all switched. They switched us all to plastic. You can ask for paper sacks, but they switched us.
And where does plastic come from?
Yeah, well, fossil fuels, and on top of that, it ends up in the landfill and it doesn't biodegrade. It's not biodegradable. They've started reintroducing recycled plastic, but then they have to put in little extra reinforcements because the plastic isn't of the same value. But it's just like these Democrats come up with these crackpot ideas and then turn around and. Everything that they do is, everything they seem to touch in the last 50 years has just gone to hell in a handbasket. They have no clue. They don't have the vision past the end of their nose. The good thing about most of them is their nose is about this long because of all the lies they told. But that's as far as their vision goes. Let's just do what we can to destroy the country. Anyways, there's my rant.
Well, there you go. You hit the point right there, because they don't think that the United States is a great country. They think of us, the only thing they see are all the flaws that we've had that we've already resolved in the past, 150, 200 years so far?
Yeah.
They think we're a systemic racist nation. Well, what system is racist? Can you tell us what that is? I'd like to know. Maybe we can fix that. But they can't tell us. Because they don't want to. Because they want to divide this country and they want to tear it down just to hold on to power. They want to be more like China, to where they have a dictatorship. Is basically what it is. And if you think about communism, it's just feudalism rebranded, because
Yeah.
they still have people in power living better than the common folk. So you
Chinese
can't
right
have
now.
equality if you have some people holding the levers of power that live better than the common person.
Here's an example. If the German people right now were to start printing their Deutschmarks with a picture of Adolf Hitler, all hell would break loose.
Yeah.
The world would come against them. They would just, they would bomb them, I think, just to stop. They'd bomb their printing factories or their mints just to destroy that, keep that from happening. They'd bring lawsuits. But isn't it funny that the Chinese government still has Mao Zedong, who has the most deaths above Lenin, above
Yep.
Stalin, above Hitler.
Yep.
Hitler's number 3.
Yep.
Stalin is number 2, but Mao Zedong is number 1. But yet he's on the bill of the same Chinese bills that we're borrowing from.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest mass murderer in the world in the history. And here's the thing: it wasn't just that he took 30 million people or however many it was that he killed. He didn't just run them all into gas ovens, like Hitler. No, he created an economy that was so bad that mass starvations were happening.
Right.
He by centralizing that stuff, he took all that land and started putting. Thank you, 70 million. I knew it was up there pretty high. That's what communism does. They took all that power and put it in the top tiers, and then they put all the peasants, the ones that were farming, that were bringing in food,
Mm-hmm.
that were making the country work. Well, those are the ones the ones that fought with us, during World War II against the Japanese. We're those were the ones. But when they took that away from them and they made all the property and put they killed off their farming industry. They had more people starving to death than that died during the invasion of Japan, or the Japanese invasion prior to World War II. I mean, it's just but yet it's okay to put his picture on and to use that. Like I said, if the Germans put a picture of Adolf Hitler on it, and we're going to do it. We need to buy something from Germany, but you got to pay it in Deutschmarks. Okay. Well, here's my Hitler bill. Yeah, that's going to go over real friggin' well.
Yep.
But it's okay when you buy one of them drones from China and it's paid in Chinese yens and it's got a picture of Mao on it. It's okay.
Right.
It's acceptable. I guess because Hitler didn't visit Richard Nixon and Mao did. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, another rant.
There you go. So, that's what's going on. So I'm starting to see political ads on YouTube already. And they've been doing it for, a couple months already. Senator Bennett he's got that fishing ad where he's got the fly fishing guide. I'm not a Democrat, but Michael Bennett makes sense. And Michael Bennett had to pay for a 1-day fishing pass just to do that ad, which is so crazy. And then they want to come down on Lauren Boebert, who's done more for the state, saying, well, she's never here in Colorado. She's not doing anything. Michael Bennett hasn't been to Colorado in, I don't know. He only comes back during the election season. And he's not a Coloradan. He grew up in Washington, D.C. The only reason he got into politics is because he got his job on the state school board. And that's how he got elevated. And then when Hold on.
Okay. Well, you brought up Boebert, and she just shut down her restaurant that she became famous for because the people that owned the building wouldn't renew the lease. And so all of those waitresses, because that was I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but it was where they all wore guns.
Shooters, I believe.
Shooters, yeah. Well, they had to shut it down because they lost the lease on their building, and that was a direct result.
Well, I think they were going to move to another location.
Were they going to last? I hadn't heard whether they got a new location or not.
Because, but to get back to Michael Bennet,
right?
When Ken Salazar, who at the time was a senator from Colorado,
right,
was appointed to be on Secretary of the Interior under Obama, Governor Ritter decided, who would be good for that position? Let's put Michael Bennet in it. That's why he's called the accidental senator from Colorado.
Yeah.
And our other senator, Hickenlooper, he's not from Colorado. He's from Connecticut.
Yeah. Well, and there was a lot of influence in Colorado over the years. I mean, they were always a conservative state up until 10, 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
And but they had a lot of influence when you got the Kennedys flying in to go skiing. You got all these people coming in to Aspen and all the different snow ski ranges up there. They're bringing their crap with them, and hey, these people bring money into the state. We got to kind of help them out, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's
Then we have uber rich Democrats move into our state and come up with a thing called the Blueprint. And Jared Polis is part of that gang of four that started us down this road to turning this conservative state into a blue state. And, we got Pat Stryker. She's from Michigan. She's a billionaire. She inherited the Stryker medical company.
Right.
And now she pretty much runs Fort Collins because just about everybody on the city council is in her back pocket.
Yeah, I'm reading a series of books there.
You're reading a book?
Yeah. Actually, I'm on the 7th book of this one author, Jeff Wheeler. And one of the things is it's a science, or not science, it's more the fantasy realm. It's like House of Dragon type stuff without the dragons, but the underlying theme is good versus evil. But one of the things there, in this book, this is the end of one. There are two series. This is the end of the second series. But anyways, Art just sits on them. Yeah, that's.
And that's true sometimes.
Yeah, but anyways, they're talking about everybody, there was a one way to do it. There were the people that were the true believers and then you had the evil side coming in, and it's got that underlying theme, and it talks about how they can't feel the spirit because there's so much evil that they've allowed in that is destroying their land. I mean, they're fixing to get invaded because they've let these people come in and weaken their country, and now they're going to be taken over by this other group of non-believers, and it's just the striking thing about it, one of the bad guys throughout the series is the sheriff of Mendenhall.
Oh, the sheriff of Mendenhall. Okay.
I had no clue that was the name of a character in there, and it blew my mind. I'm reading this book, it just caught my eye, and they mentioned the sheriff. So I wrote the guy, and I said, "Well, he lives in Utah, so there's in Provo. There's a big Mendenhall furniture store, and the Mendenhalls have got some of the family there, you know, obviously not from my line. Mine has always been the poorest group. We're at the bottom of the barrel, Mendenhalls, you know.
Right.
We're the poor white trash Mendenhall. All the rest of them are rich, like the Nixon family and, you know, all the Millhouses and all those people that are related to us. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, the idea was, is they've infiltrated this organization. That's where, yes, you're right, Uncle Bill. That's exactly where he resides. But you know, if you get a chance, read the Jeff Wheeler, and it's one of the legends of Muirwood, and which means it's a Germanic term that means dark wood, the dark woods. You know, but and I see this. I'm sitting there reading this book, and it's like I'm seeing how our country has, you know, we look at Queen Elizabeth, and that's one of the things that this lady who's just became, or this young woman just became queen in this book, because her father was an evil person, and somebody ended up assassinating him, and not her, but in her name they did it. But she's realizing that you know, they've been so busy infighting with each other that they're not seeing the enemies. She's been out there in the world and seen the enemies coming towards her. You know, it's because they've lost their way, and this is what's happened in the United States. We have lost our way as a country. We no longer fight for the right to be an American citizen. We would rather say America is poor, is a terrible country. You know, Tulsa, right now, there's one survivor of the Tulsa race riot, and I'm going to call it, that's what it was. It was the Tulsa race riot. That's what it's being called until they came up with a new, more politically correct name. And it was terrible. And there's one person, she's 105. She was only 5 years old when it happened.
Wow.
But she's the last remaining member. But yet, they've brought up, and most people don't realize, the new people to the state don't realize, reparations were made to these families 25 years ago on the 75th anniversary of that race riot. They made huge payouts. The city of Tulsa did. But now they've got people suing to get all this money, but there's only one person who has the right to even do that, and she's already received reparations once.
Right.
And she's 105 years old. What in the hell is she going to do with that money?
Right.
You know, we've let people come in to our country that, you know, or to our states, that their sole goal is to turn us from the way of being good Americans, proud Americans, to this ridiculous, you know, just like what Mao did with his people. You know, they're going to, when people start starving to death on the streets, which they're already getting there, maybe they'll see what socialism is all about. You know, I hope people pull their heads out for this election.
Yeah, I hope so too. I just, like you said, I just hope that our candidates stick to the talking point that matter. Don't talk about abortion. Talk about it, but don't make it a big deal about it.
I think the way Thaddeus pointed out, he needs to go down that, you know, go down a list of 5 or 6 things, hit it, and ask, how do you feel about that? Why do you feel about that? Explain your point. Here's why I feel about it. Boom. And once they say, well, I think once the curtain is pulled away, people say, oh, man. But we need to explain what the Supreme Court did with overturning Roe versus Wade and why. And we really need, and then be done with it and move on to the rest. You know, let's get it over with, get it out there. You know, quit talking about a president who hasn't been president for 2 years. Screwed up countries because the guy.
And don't talk about stolen elections, because that's old history, because we're not going to be changing that.
It's not. There's no way to change it.
If okay, say they came up with some real evidence that the election was stolen, what good would come from that? You know what would happen? You would have riots in the street.
And Nancy Pelosi would be the president.
Well,
we'd have to take out Kamala Harris
the liberals who that they'd be up in arms. And then if it went the other way, it's just very divisive. We need to stay away from stolen elections and worry about winning this election so we could take back the House and the Senate and block a bunch of garbage from getting to this.
And this is why this is exactly why so many Democrats being putting so much money into some of these Republican candidates, because they want them to talk about stolen elections in January 6th, and they want to drudge all that up. I heard there's a general, a retired general. He says they're assuming this is what I'm about, but that's not what I'm about. He says, but because I made some comments, but that's not what this election is about. He's trying to, and this is what but we're preaching to the choir here. I don't know if it would be nice if somehow or another some of these candidates around the country would hear this, and understand this. You can't live with the past because we can't undo it,
Right.
We don't have to
Lloyd,
like it.
We've done a little over an hour, and boy, we covered a lot. Thaddeus was great, as always. I want to thank all you folks in the chat. Thanks for coming. Hope you have a great Sunday. Catch you all next time, and God bless.
Yep.
Good night.
Take care, everyone.